This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
Hello and welcome on board a journey like never before, presented by Fly Kingfisher. Well, this is where we meet India's young pathbreakers who are redefining their genre work, be it sports, business, politics, or entertainment. Our guest today is a chemical engineer from the US. He gave up a lucrative job to follow his dream, filmmaking, and then went on to redefine Indian cinema with his genre films. His style is unique, and his low-budget crossover films have inspired many other filmmakers to do the same. He's often termed a maverick. Please welcome on board the very versatile and talented Nagesh Kukunoor. Nagesh, thank you so much for being with us on this journey like never before.
Glad to
Well,
be
there's a
here.
reason why we call you versatile, is because you direct films, you act in your films, you write the scripts, and you also produce films.
It's all films.
How do you do it?
Well, some of us are blessed in doing what we truly love. And I remember as a chemical engineer, waking up every morning to go to work. It would take me a good 15-20 minutes to just get out of bed and reach for that cup of coffee. And I never knew what it was to just wake up in the morning, almost like that proverbial, goody two-shoes kind of guy, wake up smiling and run into work till I started making films. So it's just one of those, I love every aspect of filmmaking, every aspect.
But the fascination for films, when did that begin?
See, I think honestly, if you trace it back, and a lot of people who eventually ended up being directors, filmmakers, you'll see that there was some level of madness for this art form.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure why this one is more, why does it lure people stronger than the other ones? I don't know this, but mine was no different. If you trace it back, I was maniacally obsessed even as a little kid. Every opportunity I got, it was off to the theaters. If, your parents took you or some aunt or uncle, someone took you along.
So as a kid, it was always the Telugu films, English and Hindi, and what was
Actually,
it
no.
like?
It was interesting. My dad was a huge fan of Hindi films, even though we're Telugus,
Yeah.
living in Hyderabad. So predominantly I watched Hindi films, and every single English movie that rolled into town, because dad was a huge fan of Hollywood. So I think my love for English cinema started way, way back.
Like you mentioned, you were working in Atlanta, you are a chemical engineer, you were an environment consultant in Atlanta.
Right.
You give it all up to make a film. You
Right.
give it all up to pursue a dream. How tough was it? It needs a lot of courage. It requires a lot of courage.
See, I've always said that the greatest motivator in life is unhappiness. We are such creatures of comfort. We gravitate towards anything that gives us, this nice cozy zone. And I always felt that if you're truly unhappy doing what you do or where you are in your life, that's the only time you look for a change. And so, I had my checklist. I went to the US, did my master's, then started working there. Everything was going hunky-dory. About 2 or 3 years into my job, I said, is this what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? And, the joke that I always said was, I'm going to wake up one day, realize I'm 40, have a wife and 2 kids and a dog, and that'd be the end of my life. Just pick up a gun and shoot myself in the head. And as much as I joked, it wasn't a joke, because this thing would scare me that I'd just go through life, go through the motions kind of thing. And became apparent that I was unhappy. I needed to do something else.
So you give it all up and you come to Bombay. But it's not immediately that, you started making films. You gave yourself a lot of time.
The funny part to my story actually has 2 parts. Part 1, in a very dramatic way, I quit my job, gave up everything, came to India to
Yeah.
change the industry. And after the first couple of days on a few sets, I realized that I
It's
wasn't
not
going to fit in.
happening,
That this was not what I was going to make for sure. So then I wrote the script to Hyderabad Blues, and I went back to the
To
US.
make some money to come back.
Exactly.
And make the
Took
film.
up another job, worked. So the second time around, part 2, that was the challenge.
Right now we have someone very special joining us on the show, Ilahi Hiptullah. a very dear friend and colleague of Nagesh's. Thank you so much, Ilahi, for joining us on a journey like never before. Well, tell us about your journey with Nagesh.
It is never easy to work with Nagesh. It is very difficult, and that's the joy, that's the pleasure, that's what we all want when we work with Nagesh. He pushes you to a limit that you didn't know existed that you could perform at. He pushes you to better yourself every time, to come up with, new solutions. Like he always says, don't give me problems, give me solutions. And he gives us many problems, but it's all worth it. The journey has been fantastic, and inshallah, the way he is, it will be never ending.
I hope so, because very few times you're given a chance to do what you truly love, and if that gives you happiness, then I hope it happens for the rest of my life.
We have someone who I think you will love to see on the show, Mr. Naseeruddin Shah.
Oh, awesome.
Mr. Naseeruddin Shah, thank you so much for joining us on a journey like never before. We have Nagesh sitting with me in the studio and he just can't stop laughing. But I just want to ask you one thing. When the name Nagesh Kukunoor comes up, what are your first thoughts?
I can't wait.
Small budget and William Shakespeare. Small budget because it's evident why, and William Shakespeare perhaps not so evident, but I think that Nagesh is one of the greatest screenplay writers that we've had. I visualize him writing furiously, and that's how I always have. And also because he's about as prolific as Shakespeare was in turning out scripts one after the other. He continues undeterred, which is a quality I greatly admire.
Okay, so that's a huge compliment coming for you from Naseeruddin Shah. So if I could ask you one quality of Nagesh's that you really admire apart from what you just said, qualities that set Nagesh apart from other filmmakers.
His keen observation of life, I think. I don't believe you need formal training if you have the capacity to discipline yourself, which obviously he has, because his best films have been those which have been where he has had to tighten his belt and work under hard conditions. And I think that's an ability which not many filmmakers have. Also, the fact that he uses material from his real life a lot of the time. I wish he would do more such stuff, where he can draw upon things he's deeply felt for or things that have happened to him.
That's something very important that Naseerji said, that your stories are always about real people and real situations.
Yeah, I like to call it real fiction, if you will. The thing is, like he said, I never realized that I observe people. But when I started writing, it's amazing how much I would, images would keep popping in my head about people I knew and stuff, the way they spoke. And I've always felt, especially in Indian cinema, something happened in the last 20 or 30 years where we have gone to making characters who none of us can relate to. We go to watch a film knowing fully well that that character up on the screen is someone we can aspire to be, but someone we don't know. And that never made sense to me. And for me, this exciting thing about just pulling real people and putting them in situations, much more exciting.